thanks for watching Diligent Canine on Patreon. I appreciate your support. This time I'm going to talk about the learning process for dogs. I've already talked about sort of the theory, behaviorism, and cognition, and how dogs build associations in other videos. So what I want to talk about is what training looks like as you develop, say, obedience. So the first thing you need to do is to teach the dog. You need to shape and reinforce a behavior, start to build the association with your command, and then mark and reward afterwards. So you're going to use a combination of methods here, probably. So you might lure the dog, let's say a sit, for example. I'm going to lure the dog with food over his nose and between his eyes and ears to teach him to sit. And then I'm going to add the command sit before I start to lure the dog. So first I just lure the dog, and I do that over and over and over, hundreds of repetitions. Then I'm going to add the command. Okay, so this is getting into our behaviorism theory again, our classical conditioning. So I'm going to say sit, then lure the dog, and of course if he sits, I'll say yes or click and give him his food. So what happens there is eventually when I say sit, the dog anticipates the lure coming and getting the reward afterwards. So, or more specifically, the command, the dog anticipates the lure, sits, I mark, anticipates, and of course gets his reward. So once the dog has been taught a behavior and you've got maybe like 80%, maybe 90%, or 80 or 90%, whatever, pretty good success rate, and you're sure that the dog has learned the behavior, then you can start to generalize the behavior. And what that means is you increase the sort of stimulation around the dog. So when you first teach your dog, you don't want to teach him in a super stressful environment. You don't want to be at a pet store, the vet, or the park with other dogs and people and cars and all that going on. You want it to be a quiet, comfortable place. Mike Ritland calls this like his, not a training area, but a designated space, your dog's training room. Okay, so you might not actually have an independent room in your house dedicated to dog training, but you might be able to have like one stall in your garage, or like a corner in the basement, or push back the chairs and the couch in your living room, something like that. But it needs to be the training arena where your dog understands things are neutral, it's relaxed, and it can learn. Then you start to add stimulation. So this generalizing process is very, very gradual. So you might start by adding stimulating things to that comfortable environment. What does this mean? Well, let's take your living room for example. So you've pushed out the chairs and the couches and the table. It's a clear space to work with your dog. And you've done that for several, maybe a month or a couple weeks. You've been working really hard. You've done well. So you're going to dump a bucket of tennis balls in there. I'm going to take a step back. A bucket of tennis balls might be too overstimulating. So you might just leave like a tug toy or a ball or a couple of those things on the ground. Then a few weeks later you might add more of them, and a few weeks after that you might move to a little more stimulating environment, say like your backyard, where the dog can hear and see and smell some things or know they're around, but it's not in direct threat to them like it would be in maybe like the front yard then, or definitely is not ready to be like going down the street and around the neighborhood. So you can see that you have a very gradual process. And what's really critical here is to pay attention to your dog's behavior and notice when it's starting to show any kind of avoidance behavior or shutting down or any kind of panic. Ideally, you don't want to react to that. You want to sort of anticipate it and be able to back off a step. It's okay if you have to take longer. It's better to err on the side of caution and really develop repetition. That's much more preferable than like scaring your dog and having them sort of relapse or regress in their behavior. That's going to be really tough to combat, because dogs now learn that X environment equals fear or whatever unpleasant, undesirable or hurtful thing happened because you overstimulated them too quickly. So Once a dog's behavior has been generalized, then you can start to proof it. And what this really means is we are proofing off of distractions. We're getting very specific with our criteria. So the rewards might become slower, they might be variable, they might not come at all, because our expectation is that the dog obeys us, and we will punish the dog or correct it rather when it does not follow our commands. So the point being, I hope that you'll use corrections rather than just punishing your dog, but the point being, the dog has learned that there's an expectation that it will listen. Again, this is way down the road of teaching a dog, generalizing the behavior, and then proofing the behavior. In other words, the dog must first learn what the heck you want it to do. It must learn to do that in a multitude of environments under different varying levels of stress. And then we solidify that all together by reminding the dog that it must listen to us. Good things will happen if you listen to us. Bad things will happen if you do not listen to us.